Hey out there, legal warriors. Who's a party to the party? When I say who's a party, that means who's involved. And what's the party? A criminal case. Boy, we get this question all the time. Who's shown up to court? What should I expect in court? And in this video, I'm going to answer it. If you're interested in this area of the law, stay tuned. This is the video for you. My name is Attorney Lance Fryrear. I'm a defense attorney in Lynnwood, Washington. My law firm's been defending people charged with crimes all throughout Washington State for more than 20 years. I'm putting out these videos to help educate the public. So if you find this useful, please like and please subscribe. More people get the help they need. Now I'm just going to jump right into it. Just a few minutes ago, I was walking up and down to my office and saying, hey team, what are some problems that we've been hearing where people have confusion in the system? And one of my newer attorneys says, well, have you done a video about who's a party to the party? I said, what do you mean? She says, well, I keep getting questions about, well, how come the alleged victim isn't in court when I go to court? Or how come the person who stopped me at the store or stopped me at the casino, the person that I said did something wrong, isn't at court? I mean, I expected to see them in court. And that makes sense that people who haven't ever been accused of a crime sort of have these expectations because they watch TV, and usually what's on TV are trials and things where witnesses show up and testify. And it makes sense if or the police officers, that's what we see on TV, right? However, in the criminal system in Washington State, it doesn't exactly work like that unless we get all the way to a trial. So in this video, I'm going to talk about 3 of the different types of hearings that you might have to attend yourself, who you might expect to see at those hearings, and then finally, when it is we might actually expect to see the people that we're talking about, right? The alleged victim, the police officer, the complaining witness, stuff like that. So what are the 3 types of hearings we're typically going to go to as a criminal defendant? Well, the first hearing is called an arraignment. And an arraignment, that's where we show up and we're informed of the nature of the charges against us. Hey, you're charged with DUI. And then we enter a plea of not guilty. At that point, the court's going to set conditions of release. We have a video about conditions of release if you want to know what that's about. And then they're going to set a new court date. So sticking to that first court date, the arraignment, who we expect to see at that hearing is we expect to see the prosecutor. That's the person who represents the government, who is the person that's in charge of pursuing the criminal case against the defendant. We expect to see the judge. That's the person who's making rulings about what the conditions should be and setting court dates. We'll expect to see a court clerk or 2. That's another person who's like helping run the show. In Washington State, we're not typically going to see a court reporter. It's usually going to be recorded unless we have a felony. So hope we don't have one of those. And then additionally, we're going to see typically a defense attorney. If you've hired your own attorney, that attorney is going to come to court and meet you there probably. If you haven't hired an attorney, there's usually going to be sort of a stand-in attorney of the day type public defender to help people. That's all we're going to see. We're not going to see the complaining witness. Typically, we're certainly not going to see the police officer. We could see the alleged victim if they're there to help you in a domestic violence case where they want to tell the court they don't want a no contact order. Or we could see the alleged victim showing up saying they do want a no contact order. Once in a blue moon, we'll see a very interested alleged victim in some type of case. I can remember a case in the last 12 months where the alleged victims showed up to every court date, right? And that's usually not a good sign for the defense because that puts some pressure on the prosecutor to feel like they need to hold the line more because they're going to be in trouble from the victims if they don't do what they want. But what we're not likely to see is anybody except those first people I talked about. Next, after the arraignment, they set a pretrial hearing. At a pretrial hearing, it's pretty similar to arraignment. However, there's actually less that happens. You're going to see the same people at the pretrial as the arraignment. You're going to see the prosecutor. You're going to see the judge. There's going to be a court clerk. And there's going to be yourself as the defendant and your attorney. Hopefully you have one by then. You'll also see maybe 15 or 25 other defendants in the courtroom too, just waiting for their turn to be called. And currently in Washington State, you may be able to skip the pretrial if your attorney tells you that you can. Especially private attorneys can use a new rule that happened since COVID called Criminal Rule 3.4 that lets us waive our client's presence if we maintain good contact with them. We can waive their presence at many, many pretrial hearings. Now, don't just go out there and don't show up to your court date. This isn't legal advice. You need to talk to your attorney because each court is a little different and has their own little special ways of doing things. But hopefully you won't have to show up to many pretrials. And if you do, it's going to be very unexciting usually. We have a whole video also about what to expect at your pretrial hearing. The third type of hearing where you might have to go to more often than not is a resolution hearing. Now, that's not what they're actually called, but the date when we resolve the case. That would usually also be on a pretrial calendar, but that's the date you're showing up to resolve the case. Now, at a resolution hearing, that means we're going to enter a plea, or the prosecutor's going to dismiss it at that hearing, or we're going to enter a stipulated order of continuance at that hearing. At that hearing, you're a little bit more likely to see a victim, especially if it's a plea. If there's a victim in a case where they're being found guilty to, the prosecutor is required to give the victim notification. So that's one of the few times we might expect to see the victim show up and say how this event affected their lives. More often than not, that would be in a felony case. You rarely see that in a non-felony, but it does happen. And talk to your attorney about what to expect. We got to sort of grit our teeth and just listen to what they have to say. And hopefully your attorney can be able to put things in a way that can accept whatever that alleged victim's saying while still supporting you in front of the court. For the most part, however, if we have a resolution, unless it's a case with an identifiable victim, it's still going to be just the same parties that we regularly see. So that's the three type of hearings you could expect to have to show up to typically and who you might expect to see. Now, what I also said I was going to cover is when should we expect to see people in the court that aren't the prosecutor and the judge and the defense attorney. When should we expect to see the police officer or alleged victims or actual witnesses? Well, there's two major times when we would expect to see them. One would be at a motion hearing. If your attorney is filing a motion to suppress evidence or to dismiss the case, at that point, we're typically going to see at least one police officer show up to testify because the prosecutor needs to call their officer to try to fight the motion that your defense attorney is filing, right? There are some exceptions. There's certain types of motions called NABSTAD motions, which are just done on the police report. But the most common motion is called a 3-5 hearing. It's where there's a hearing to determine whether or not statements that you made to the police are admissible in court. Were they post-Miranda? Were they pre-Miranda? Were they custodial interrogation? Or were they just, talking when we were allowed to talk? So in that case, you're going to see a police officer. Sometimes now with the DUI, if it's a state patrol case, there's going to be a video, right, of the cars driving. We've had to file motions to dismiss DUIs in the past where what the officer says they saw on the driving is not on the officer's video. So, of course, then the prosecutor's going to call the officer to testify about, well, I saw it even though it's not on the video. And then the judge, of course, would decide what to do. So a motion hearing is when we're going to expect to see police officers. The other time we're going to expect to see pretty much all the witnesses was what you actually see on TV. It's a trial. At a trial, you're going to see every possible witness that the prosecution wants to call to try to prove their case. That's going to be police officers, other types of people that stand by, that saw something on the side of the street, right? It could be the alleged victim, the victim's family. It could be doctors, psychologists, you name it. And you're also going to see your own people because your defense may be calling people to support your defense. So that's going to be where we can feel the big pressure, and it feels a little more difficult to handle. And hopefully, if your case is getting to a trial, your attorney has you well prepared for what to expect. But those are the two situations where you're going to see witnesses, where you're going to see people, motion hearings, and trials. So what's the moral of the story? Well, court is not exciting, and hopefully it never becomes exciting for you. It's nerve-wracking. It's going to cause you anxiety, and I encourage you to ask your attorney what to expect in court. From doing this for 30 years, I had a training where we were training part of my staff here on Wednesday just 2 days ago, and I was reminding staff, it's like, hey, it's easy for us. We do this all the time. Sometimes we can lose touch with what it's like for somebody accused of a crime. It's really terrifying. We know what to expect, and I think we could all do a better job explaining to our clients what to expect That's why I was so grateful that one of my newer attorneys here shared that with me, and hopefully this video can help you regardless of where you are, what stage you are in the system. So I hope you found this useful. If so, please like and please subscribe. More people get to see it, more people get the help they need, and more importantly, if you have a criminal problem in Washington State, feel free to reach out to my firm. We get on board, we'll listen to what happened, we'll identify a way forward, and we will be there for you. Thank you.